for me, you know, it's not just a hobby. I'm not just into these skills, and that's probably pretty obvious at this point in the week, but I'm not into these skills just because I like doing them, but because they feel important and I feel like they really mean something, and it really means something to me to be able to share them with all of you. You know, I recorded all of these videos within the last couple of weeks, and most of them took place before the events that are going on in the US right now, which are huge social and political importance, with intense riots and violence and, you know, a lot of people up in arms over systems of deeply entrenched oppression. And it feels really relevant in terms of like, what is the context? And I think that a lot of the things that we're seeing are due to unequal access to the basic things that we need for life, right? Right now it's around safety, but, you know, things like access to these skills, access to food, access to wild space, access to clean air and water, access to education, all of these things are related to the you know, the schisms and the inequity and injustice that we see in this country and in lots of places around the world. And I see offering these skills to as many people as possible as one of my political acts and one of my ways to help disenfranchised people to, you know, feel more empowered, to feel like they have choice, to feel like they have the capacity to tend to their needs, their health, their well-being, and those of their family and loved ones. The context in which we practice these skills is a big topic and an important one for me, and I have on my website, and I have written in some of the letters to you, but I, and thus Buckskin Revolution, because Buckskin Revolution is me, am very committed to social justice, and Buckskin Revolution is committed to social justice and offers scholarships and lower rates to people of color, particularly Native and Indigenous people of color. And we have several people of color in this gathering who are here on scholarship, and offering scholarships to transgender people who also often have unequal access to things and socioeconomic factors that make it harder to have access to the things I offer. So that feels really important, and having more access to these skills and looking at why we tend to see a whole lot more white people at these gatherings instead of, you know, a more representative cross-section of our culture is something that feels important for me to look at and talk about. So I want to put that out there, and it feels edgy to bring politics, and if you consider that politics, which honestly I consider humans having equal access to the things they need pretty basic and not actually particularly charged politically, but that's me. So anyway, just to put that out there, empowering ourselves, and through empowering ourselves, being in a position to empower others, you know, teaching what we've learned this week, being a little nucleus of, I want to say self-sufficiency because that's kind of the, you know, the rubric in my head, but it's not, right? It's community sufficiency too. It's helping one another. It's making medicines so we can share them with our entire neighborhood in the time of a global pandemic. It's knowing how to find food if your neighborhood is shut down and the food stores have been looted and burned in riots. It's being able to help your community if a hurricane hits you wherever you are and there's no clean water to be had, you know, things like this. These are how we help one another, and these are community sufficiency, community building, and overall resilience skills. So they matter, and I hope that they have done a lot to change you and how you feel in the world in terms of feeling more empowered and more able, and that you are able to spread that to your friends and loved ones and other folks as well. I think that so much of the unrest that we see in the world is because of how far we are from our capacity to meet our own basic needs, and let's do something about it. I've talked about a lot throughout this week about who we are as humans and how we evolved, and how living in a manner more close to how we evolved tends to make us feel better in so many ways, more healthy, right? When we eat a diet closer to the diet that we evolved to eat, healthy, fresh, seasonal, you know, lower in carbohydrates, more in those plants packed with nutrients, all of that stuff, that is keeping in line with our evolutionary history. So we have talked about it in terms of food security, and then talked in terms of health and wellness, but there's so much more to it. And you know, I have a science background. I have a master's in environmental science, and some of you heard me talking about insects. Insects have come up a little bit this week because that's part of what I studied, entomology and botany, and the ways insects and plants interact. But you know, I think often we think about evolution as people or creatures adapting to their environment. The truth is that is one of the consequences of evolution, certainly, but evolution is a process that takes a really, really, really long time. And when we have factors that shift so one of the things that is required for evolution is natural selection, right? And things to do well or not in terms of their reproductive capacity based on whether or not they're able to survive to reproductive years and then pass on viable offspring that can go on to reproduce. Well, with modern medicine and so much intervention in the ways humans live our lives today, you know, evolution isn't exactly still happening for us because we can intervene and change things that might not have been the case, you know, hundreds of years ago. And because of those two factors, humans have not, we couldn't, in the time frame we have evolved to adapt to the modern lives we live, nor with the ways, you know, modern medicine is, our natural selection forces still actually acting on humans. So this is all to say that I think that a lot of the reasons why a lot of people feel, you know, unempowered or have a hard time or have a lot of health issues or have a lot of emotional stuff going on in the world today is because we are living in environments that are so different from those in which we evolved to be. And there are a lot of our senses and our physical aspects that evolved to do certain things that we don't have access to as much anymore. So, you know, we hear a lot about diet and exercise and how important those are for our health and well-being, and that's very true. That's something that I'm very conscientious about, but there's a lot of movements towards natural movement and barefoot shoes and all of these things that are kind of unpeeling the little ways that the modern world has pushed us into things that our bodies aren't evolved for. Like, for example, I'm sitting on a low stool right now instead of a chair because chairs are actually harmful for your posture and for your back. And a lot of the ways that modern chairs are built are to cater towards the ways that we are no longer as resilient and natural in our bodies, and therefore they tend to exacerbate problems that we already have. They like pander to where we're at rather than kind of nudging us towards being strong and healthy and vital in our bodies in the ways that we evolved to move in our bodies. So I suggest, so this video is going to be a lot of like, where do we go from here and how do we take these things one step further and improve our situations in the world in general, and looking into natural movements. So Katie Bowman has written a lot about working within your genetics, about barefoot movement, about ways to be in our bodies in ways that are more natural and work better for our bodies. MoveNat is a natural movement kind of movement trend that I encourage you to look into. I feel so different in my body when I am getting out and moving across the land regularly, and I feel like that there's a reason for that. You know, there's something in my nervous system that wants to see stretches of ground disappear under my feet, right? Because that's what my ancestors were doing to hunt and gather and being out there. So it's not just about our health. I think it's really about our well-being too, and the ways when we do the things that our bodies evolved to do, there's a feeling of contentment and wholeness that is really different than if we're in complete denial of those things. So, you know, diet and including wild foods in your diet, and exercise that involves being out and moving across landscapes, and getting yourself to places where you have far-reaching vision, where you're not just staring at something right in front of your face as we are when we're reading books or looking at screens or phones or that kind of thing, but vistas, so that you're using your eyes in a multitude of different ways. There's something that we call in the nature connection circles owl eyes, which is broadening your awareness to having more of a soft focus, so you're paying more attention to shapes and colors and movement in a way that a lot of animals do. and seeing how that shifts your awareness, and how those shifts in awareness in turn shift the way you feel. So I'd love to turn you on to the work of a man called Paul Shepard, who is no longer with us, but he's authored a lot of wonderful books. Coming Home to the Pleistocene is one of his classic books, but kind of talking about these themes and who we are as humans and what we evolved for, and how different how we live is now. To me, these skills are about ways to get a little closer to that. Also, really, really important, so important, the work of Peter Levine and a trauma therapy modality called somatic experiencing, as a way to understand the human nervous system and help us actually deal with all of the stimulation and various traumas that we experience in our life in a way that's actually in tune with our biology and physiology, and particularly our nervous systems. So we have these nervous systems that evolved for, communal living and moving a lot more slowly, and being in a way that we have all of this stimulation from the natural world in really different ways than most of us do. And the ways our systems interact with trauma are really different than those of wild animals. So I have a dear friend, Twig, Anthony Twig Wheeler, who has a website, Liberation is Possible, and he has all kinds of wonderful information. Knowing how my nervous system works feels so huge. There's a thrush that just landed. I think it's a Swainson's thrush. Landed on the cherry tree outside my mom's house. It has changed my world to understand how my nervous system works, and help me be able to deal with the various, difficulties and traumas that come my way in a way that's in line with that. If you look at animals in the wild, they experience incredible fear and trauma, right? Sorry, I'm totally distracted. It's not a thrush. I am not sure who it is. It is sure gobbling down my mom's not quite ripe cherries, but it's a good sized bird. It's bigger than a thrush. Anyway, stay on topic, Wonia. See, this is what happens, but isn't it fun? It's so much more fun to be paying attention to these things as we do our other things in the world. So it's good modeling and coyote mentoring. Anyway, wild animals often have incredible threats to their lives regularly, right? Most critters have gotten chased to within an inch of their lives and narrowly escaped. And yet they shake it off, and in no time go back to the life that they lived and don't have lasting trauma. Whereas humans can, experience something, a surgery or a car accident, or, God knows, being in places of violence or war or any of the things going on right now in this country, and have PTSD that affects them for the rest of their life. So Peter Levine is a man who looked at, why is that? What is different about us? We're animals too, and why can a gazelle be chased and barely escape from a cheetah and then be totally fine and have no sign of it the next day, whereas a human can have a more minor event and it tanks the rest of their life, or it deeply affects the rest of their life. And it's about how our nervous systems work, and it has radically changed my life. I really, really recommend it. So Peter Levine's kind of seminal book is called Waking the Tiger. Can't recommend it highly enough. Look up his work, look into somatic experiencing, look up the work of my friend Twig on his website, The Liberation is Possible. He has a lot of resources for folks around working with trauma, and actual physiological exercises that you can do that help get you out of a place of an activated nervous system, that help get you back to I don't want to use too many fancy scientific words, but help you regulate for yourself, because there are things that you can do that are not the things that are encouraged through our culture that will make you feel so much better as a human. So many things in our lives relate to this work and ancestral skills, and not necessarily in the physical, how do you make this and how do you recognize that plant, but how do you be in a more grounded, holistic, healthy, whole way. But I just want to put forward the degree to which, these skills are super important. All of the stuff we're talking about is super important. More important than any of it in my book is mental attitude. And, you know, we are in a culture where increasingly we expect to have everything we want at the push of a button as soon, you know, like immediate gratification, getting something from somewhere halfway around the world within 24 hours or less. We have come to expect these things and feel entitled to these things. And that in turn tends to set up an idea that we need these things, right? The things that we get more and more used to, we tend to feel more and more attached to and feel a need for them. And I think that that has sent our culture in not a great direction. And certainly it's having really big repercussions on the globe. And I really want to put forward the idea to build a relationship with want. We tend to be, I would say our society can be a bit hedonistic in terms of wanting all of the things and all of the pleasures and focusing on what we want rather than what's necessarily the best thing for ourselves, for our lives, for our communities, for our planet. And I think that experiencing going without something that you feel attached to is a really, really amazing and important practice. And if you look at cultures around the world, so many cultures have this built into their practices, like Lent, for example, or fasting, or vision quests, or rites of passage that involve, you know, some measure of extremity. Often they involve some time away from society. Very, very common for them to involve some amount of fasting. And I think, you know, my time on Alone, and I know not all of you are familiar with what Alone was, and some of you, you know, it's why you're here, so it's everything across the board. But to summarize, I did a survival experience almost, well, a year and a half ago now. It was the fall of 2018, and we're in the summer. Yeah, so a year and a half ago. And it was televised, so it's on the History Channel. It was Alone season 6. But I was dropped in the Arctic in September, mid-September, which is right on the brink of winter up there, with 10 items of my choosing from a list they had. It wasn't any 10 items. So in that was 2 pounds of food, because I chose that as one of my 10 items, but very limited gear, very limited food, with, you know, a very extreme environment by myself, thus the title Alone, to survive for as long as I could. And that looked like getting food for myself off of the landscape. It looked like not getting anywhere near enough food for myself and pretty long-term starvation. I was out for 73 days in the Arctic wilderness by myself. It was well below, it was minus 20 Fahrenheit by the time I came out. It was a pretty extreme survival experience. It was pretty long term. And while I have been into Stone Age skills and done Stone Age trips and, you know, lived for times on wild foods and done a lot of things a lot of people would consider more extreme, I had never done anything remotely like that before. And it has changed my life in so many ways. And I think that so many people would benefit from something. Obviously, that's a lot more extreme than it's going to work for a lot of people. But, you know, dear Alice, who's in our gathering, she wrote me on day 73 of her sheltering at home around, you know, like what it is to experience isolation like that, because I was out for 73 days. But, you know, so there are little ways that we can find. But going to that level of extremity in terms of not having, you know, the basic tools you need, the food you need, the warmth you need, the water you need, the shelter you need in the Arctic in winter, and loving it, having a wonderful time, having it be a really amazing, enriching, connective experience, has changed so much in me in terms of what, you know, my belief in my own capacity, but also all of our capacity, you know. And when you do some of these survival shows, want to build people up and, you know, oh, this person is so tough and look what they accomplished. But I wanted to be out there to represent what we can all accomplish. You know, me, a small-bodied woman, and I have a lot of skills for sure, but that was an environment that I had never spent any time in. That was way further north than I had ever been. And I was able to do that. You know, I wasn't a big, tough person out there to kick the Arctic's butt. I was there to really live in harmony and connection and learn from the place and be schooled by the place and find the little things to appreciate in every part of the experience, even the outrageously hard parts. And that is the gift that I want to give to people. The gift of knowing what it is to go for a really long time with so much less than you need and find the beauty and find the joy and the magic in it, and then come back into your life and all of a sudden the abundance in even the average life is unbelievable. The level of abundance I experience every day now after having something that extreme blows me away. And that is the gift I want to give to people. It is so easy to find things to be upset about in our life. But, you know, your attitude as you move through life creates your experience, and you will find the things that you look for. So if you are looking for the things that are hard and make life not worth living or make life challenging, you're going to find all of those things. And if you look for the beauty and the magic and the joy and the connection, you are more likely to find those as well. What we put our energy towards is what we tend to amplify. And I want to put forward the idea that gratitude is huge. Gratitude will change your life. In every hard situation, you know, what can you find that is a gift to you in that hard situation? So when I was out starving for months in the Arctic, I went through a period where it was like, I'm starving, I'm starving, I'm starving. And then I shifted that and I said, no, I'm doing a deep cleanse. I am cleansing all of the crap that is in my body, all of the environmental toxins that are fat soluble, that are stored in my fatty tissues. I am cleansing myself of all of those. This is an opportunity, not a deprivation. And my attitude changed, and I felt different physically. I felt better physically. I didn't feel like I was starving just from changing my attitude. And that was amazing, you know? That was life-changing. And there are ways that we can do that all the time. So it's all in here. It's all in here. It's how we take it, and it's what perspective we choose to see it. For example, if I get in a, traffic jam, I can't get to where I'm going, I'm going to be hours further out than I thought I would be. That's hard, that's stressful, and I could be really bummed about it. Or I could think about how long it would take me if I was trying to walk to where I'm going. And then I'm appreciative just to have a vehicle to get to where I'm trying to get to, you know? It's all about our attitude, and in any situation, finding something that you can be grateful for is going to totally change how you engage with that situation. And I really want to recommend cultivating that attitude of gratitude. It is a practice. It is hard, and it is our choice. We choose how we interact with things, and it takes some time to form new habits, but it is something that you can do if you choose to. So anytime you're in a hard situation, just try what it feels like to just shift your perspective and look for some gift in it, you know? The gift of being able to do a cleanse when you're hungry, the gift of, all of the things I've mentioned. What is the gift in whatever challenge you're experiencing right now? There is one. And if you focus on that, your hard situation is going to feel less hard, and you're going to be better off for it. So stressors actually increase resiliency if we handle them in the right ways. And this is one of the gifts from Twig and Peter Levine. Your nervous system actually does better with little minor stresses that you are able to rise above and integrate and move on from. Constant stressors that you never get to pass through, those are horrible for your system. I mean, all kinds of long-term issues can come just from being under stress, right? But dealing with stress in the right way makes you a better, stronger person. It's amazing. So it's a gift. This is funny because this feels more like a motivational talk than a talk about ancestral skills, but it's all part of the whole. And to me, it's also related and also important. So context, attitude, experiencing what it is to get a little bit less than you feel like you need, and then recognizing that in fact many of those things that you have written in your script in your head as needs are actually wants. And then can you find ways to be appreciative for the lacks, because it gives you more gratitude when you have lacks, as in LACKS, things that you lack, because then when you get those things, then you have a new appreciation for them, right? Being sheltered at home during coronavirus and feeling isolated, think how much we're going to appreciate gathering together again. It's going to feel so different. It's going to feel amazing. And, you know, not having had access to get to the grocery store and get all of the food that you want all the time, imagine now. And imagine now if you're going to farmers markets instead of grocery stores, and how much better that's going to be for your local economy. So not having access to worldwide goods was a gift. It was a gift. Can we be better off after the coronavirus and more appreciative for the things we had that we thought were a given and we thought we had to have 3 months ago? Thank you all, and look forward to continuing to share with you. And yeah, be well.